Alright, leave the gun discussion for now. So I've talked a lot on this stream about different conservative mindsets. I've gone through the grifter, as we've seen with the former Antifa guy from PragerU. Now, grifting, again, a grifter is a person who is insincere in their advocacy. Their primary concern is money. I don't believe that Gabriel Nadales is sincere in his advocacy, and I think that his video in PragerU demonstrates that. That's one angle of conservative mindset. We've also taken a look at the fanatic, as seen with Lauren Witzke and John Doyle. The fanatic, the true believer, someone who's very open and very mask off in their advocacy for an anti-liberty, anti-egalitarian system. Someone who doesn't want equal rights. Someone who is pro-government authority. And remember, as John Doyle said, there's no such thing as a private individual. You have no privacy in your own home. These are people who are very mask off about far-right ideology, meaning government authority. And then lastly, we also took a look at someone like Karlen Poroshenko. Someone who I describe as the wayward soul, a lost one. Someone who is very pro-liberal values, such as freedom of speech, but who is misguided in their advocacy, and who thinks that conservatives are interested in conserving, as the name would suggest. In reality, it couldn't be further from the truth. Somebody like Carlin has seen the liberal Twitter position of people saying, advocating for yes, people should be deplatformed, and there's probably liberals out there who go so far as to say that liberals, to say that some people's freedom of speech should be infringed upon. As a leftist, I don't support that. I'm 100% in favour of freedom of speech. 100% in favour of the First and Second Amendment. And unfortunately, somebody like Carlin has seen liberals attacking freedom of speech and the Second Amendment, and has drawn the conclusion that it's the right, the conservatives, who are interested in protecting those values. I'm afraid they're not the ones that are interested. Again, the conservatives are the ones. Donald Trump is the one who wanted to send people to jail for a year for burning the American flag. I know I have harped on about that today, but I am a free speech absolutist, and whether you like it or not, burning the flag is an expression of free speech. And if you want to be a free speech advocate, then you have to be consistent. So we have these various conservative mindsets, and I've been doing some thinking the last few days, trying to unpack where these people come from. Really trying to, especially Lauren and John's point of view, especially trying to unpack the mindset of the fanatic. And I was in a streamer's audience the other day, and they were talking about their own experience, where they were raised in a very strict household, highly religious, highly conservative household, and they didn't really experience any other culture or point of view until they went to university, and they stayed in a like a dormitory or something like that, with a lot of international students, and that's when they really were exposed to different points of view, different ways of seeing the world, and they realized everything they were told about conservatism, everything that they were told when they were raised, just how not only wrong, but immoral it was. That all people are deserving to be treated with respect. And they described these ideologies, these highly repressive, highly restrictive, conservative ideologies, as being like a shell around people. And then something happens in a person's life where there's a crack appears in that shell, and then light starts to shine through. And described it as just a real human experience of breaking through that, like seeing the light and wanting more, wanting to go further and breaking through. And once you break through the shell and the light shines in, and you climb your way out, and then you truly see the world, are exposed to everything, are exposed to different cultures, different points of view. You really see and learn, oh my god, I was a horrible person. I advocated for ideology that was repressive, that was destructive, that you advocated for taking away people's rights. And this got me thinking. It's got me thinking about a conservative mindset. So how many of you are familiar with the analogy of Plato's cave? I find it really interesting, and I feel like it's an interesting way of examining the conservative mindset. There's a really interesting video, a really good video out there on YouTube of a voiceover of the analogy, but it's accompanied by claymation video, and like the style of the claymation adds this really hauntingly beautiful element to the analogy. I'll link it in the description of this video when it's uploaded to the segment. But anyway, the analogy goes as this. So I want you to all try and think, imagine. This is how it goes. So picture a group of people that have spent their whole lives inside of a cave. These people have not only spent their whole lives in the cave, but spent their whole lives chained up with their limbs bound and their heads bound in such a way that they can't move. They can't turn their heads, they can't turn their bodies, and they're chained facing the cave wall. Now, on the far side of the cave, behind the prisoners, burns a fire, and between where the prisoners sit chained and the fire spans a stone bridge across the length of the cave. So on one end of the cave, the prisoners face the stone wall. On the other end of the cave, the other side, burns a fire. And between them, the stone bridge. Now, every day, people pass through this cave across the stone bridge. Like, merchants taking their wares to market, children out playing, travelers moving from one town to another. And as they pass through the cave, the prisoners can't turn their heads to look at them. All they see of the people passing through is the shadows that the fire reflects. The fire burns on the far side, and it casts the shadows of the people moving across the bridge on the wall that the prisoners face. All they see of the people as they move along the bridge is their shadows, distorted and changed by the moving light of the fire. All they hear of the people as they move across the stone bridge is the distorted echoes of the sounds of their speech, their footsteps, the clanking of carts, the clip-clop of horses and cows' feet on the stone bridge. All of it is changed and distorted as the sound echoes around the cave's walls. So they never truly see and hear the people as they move through the cave. They have a very distorted mindset of their own world inside the cave. Now here's the thing, this is difficult for us to imagine because we can visualize this very easily. We, can close our eyes and picture people moving across this bridge. Imagine somebody leading a donkey and, a couple, on a horse-drawn cart. It's very easy for us to imagine that, but try and put yourself in that position where you've spent your entire life chained in a cave, facing away from those people, and all you see of them is the fire, well, is the shadows of the fire reflects on the wall that you face. All you hear is the sound as it echoes around the cave. Are you a Viking? No, mate, I'm an Australian. Now imagine one of the prisoners is taken from the cave. Imagine one of the prisoners is released into the outside world. Try and imagine going from that world, the inside world of the cave, to the one that exists outside. Just imagine how much of a shock to the senses that would be. The light, the sound, like even the air would taste different. The air of the outside world would taste so different to the stale air from inside the cave. And this prisoner can now see things for what they truly are. They can see people. They see like a man and a woman, and they recognize them from like that's the shape that I've seen on the wall. They can see animals. They can see children and birds and everything that they've seen and heard through the distorted lens of the cave. They can now see for what it really is. They can see a horse, and they know that that terrible shriek they heard was not the cry of some monster. It was just the horse's whinny echoed in the cave. The clanking was not some instruments of torture, but just its metal horseshoes clip-clopping on the stone bridge. They can now see in stark reality what they could only glimpse through hints that the shadows from the fire showed them. See, this is a lot easier for us to imagine because all of that is natural to us. We know what a man looks like. We know what a woman looks like. We know the calls of animals, so we know what they look like. We understand their shapes. This is so much easier for us to imagine. But try to imagine that seeing that for the first time when you've only had that distorted image beforehand. Now imagine the prisoner goes back inside, overwhelmed by their senses. They run back inside, and they want to tell the other prisoners that are still trapped inside the cave. They want to, call out to them and tell them, like, this is the truth of the world. This is what we've been seeing all of these years. This is what we've been hearing. All these sounds, they're just animals. They're just people, just like us. These shapes, they aren't something to fear. They're just regular people moving about the world. They stand on the stone bridge, and they shout down to the other prisoners still chained below. But the prisoners don't hear what they have to say about the outside world. All the other prisoners hear is the shouts of the prisoner who was released echoed around throughout the cave. They don't see him. All they see is his own shadow reflected by the fire against the wall in front of them. And that, to me, fairly accurately describes the conservative mindset. Somebody like Lauren Witzke and John Doyle are just prisoners chained in a cave. And the people that they advocate against, whether that be LGBT people, whoever, are the terrifying shadows reflected against the wall. And you don't leave this ideology unless you can leave the cave and start seeing things for how they really are. And I feel that pretty accurately sums up conservatism. And you know what? I think Lauren Witzke and John Doe have demonstrated that for us. So we just got to focus on getting people out and showing them the light.